join before we start. Let me know how you all are in the comments. It's a strange new year. I'm sure we're all ready to say goodbye to 2020 and hoping that 2021 is going to be a bit better. So tonight is going to be a really special evening for us, so we can drink some lovely drams that we have for you here tonight, and we can celebrate the end of 2020. Thank the Lord, finally. I'm just going to let a few more of you join in before we start. If you can hear me, let me know. Tell me where you guys are writing from, where you're watching from, and soon we'll get this party on the road. I'm really excited about this one tonight because it has been a really tough year so far, and I'm really looking forward to kind of finishing with a bang. Whiskey has been an amazing thing this year, and it's incredible to kind of see how the communities come together. We've had so many live tastings, we've had so many interactive events, and it's amazing to see how the whiskey community has dealt with the coronavirus pandemic and been able to thrive. It's one of the few industries, I think, that has truly thrived in this pandemic. So really excited to join you tonight. I am London Whiskey Guy. If any of you didn't know, you can check me out at London Whiskey Guy on my Instagram. And basically, I have been working for Pour and Sip now for a few months since we started. And if you haven't been with Pour and Sip before, well, you're in for a treat tonight. So tonight is a special New Year's Eve thing. So if you haven't subscribed to Pour and Sip before, welcome. For all of you who are subscribers, welcome back to Pour and Sip. What you should have is your lovely Pour and Sip box with your 5 drams inside. So we're going to get started tonight. So usually with the Pour and Sip, we're a subscription service. We send you a box every single month where you get 5 drams. There can be from anywhere around the world. We've had drams from America, from Finland, from Sweden, from South Africa. We're trying a South African whiskey tonight. And what we are is an open community. This is a great space, whether you're an entry-level whiskey lover or you want to get into whiskey, whether you're more advanced in your whiskey journey and you're waiting to try more stuff. This is your time. This is an open community. So please comment. The main thing that we do here tonight is we join in together, we comment, we say what we're tasting and say what we're thinking, and hopefully it's an open forum for you guys. So let's just have a look at the box that you should have been sent. Now, usually with Pour and Sip, if you're on a welcome box, you'll get lovely 2 Glencairn glasses, these beautiful tapered glasses here that are going to help your kind of whiskey tasting journey. Oh, we've got comments flying in now. So let's get to those. Oh, we've got people watching from Brazil. That is awesome. From Ghent in Belgium. That is absolutely amazing. Happy New Year, Master of Malt. Yes, so usually when we do these Pour and Sip live tastings, which are twice a month, we do them from our very fancy studio at the Master of Malt offices. Unfortunately, coronavirus, we're doing these from home. But like I said, the whiskey community is really thriving at the moment. We can still do these live tastings. We can still chat with each other. We can still talk to each other about all these whiskeys that we're trying. And yeah, I mean, coronavirus has not stopped the whiskey industry, which is really awesome. I'm pleased to see some of you are tuning in from all over the world. So that's awesome. Daniel Hockman here is from North London. From Portsmouth, Ian Sutherland, Ian Johnson from Darlington, Alistair is from Cumbria. Wow, so we really are everywhere. I'm here from West London in Acton. London Whiskey Guy, as I said, is my Instagram handle, so if you're not following me, give me a follow. Stuart's saying, got a glass of Glengoyne 18-year-old, tried for the first time this year, amazing whiskey. Absolutely, we did a Glengoyne last month, and it's one of my favourite distilleries. Right, so usually with your Pour and Sip boxes, you would get 2 Glencairn glasses for your welcome pack. You get a list of kind of telling you how to try the whiskies, how to smell the whiskies. Jeff is from Shropshire. Awesome. Lovely part of the world. But in this time, this is a special one-off box. It's New Year's. We're having a party. That's the whole point of this tonight. We have got 5 awesome drams for you. And yeah, I'm really excited about these. We're going all over the world here. We're going to America, South Africa, Scotland. So I'm sure you want to try some whiskey. So this is our New Year's Eve warm-up. Let's get started. And we're going to start tonight with the 3 Ships 6-year-old. So if you want to grab your 3 Ships 6-year-old. Now, also, don't feel like you need to rush these whiskies just when I'm speaking. If you want to just listen and just find out a bit more about the whiskies, but you're not ready to try all 5 straight away, that's totally fine. We're encouraging responsible drinking here, so we don't need to be drinking super quick. If you just want to pour yourself a little bit of it for this live tasting, just to get a taste of it, and then maybe later on you can try it the ones you like more, then that's fine as well. If you want to add water to any of these, that's fine. Ice, drinking them in, whatever you want to do. So here we go. This is the Three Ships 6-year-old. Now, this is a super, super duper exciting whiskey. I'm going to pour it just now, and I do advise you to do the same, because you'll let it air for a bit, and this is really important. So give it a bit of time to air whilst I kind of give you a little introduction about the whiskey. Look at that colour. It is absolutely beautiful. So this whiskey comes from the James Sedgwick distillery in South Africa. We're not used to South African whiskey. It's not the first place you think of when you think about whiskey. When we think of South Africa, you might think of Stellenbosch and wine. You might think of brandy, but we definitely wouldn't think of whiskey. So this is, however, the James Sedgwick distillery is very, very old, set up in 1886. But they've only recently ramped up their whiskey production. So very famous merger between the Stellenbosch Wine Corporation and the Distill Group. And then this is basically, love from Pakistan. We are really coming from all over the world today. That is so awesome to hear. 1990 was when whiskey really started ramping up in the James Sedgwick distillery. Why is that? One man, Andy Watts. If you've ever been to a whiskey show, you may have seen him before, kind of bigging up South African whiskey and bigging up the James Sedgwick distillery. Andy Watts made one of, I have to say, the most outrageous career changes I've ever seen. I've never seen this career change before. Now, he is a very famous cricketer. He used to play for Derbyshire Cricket Club. And one summer decided that he wanted to get out of England for his summer holidays and go somewhere in the sun. And with one of his friends from the cricket club, he went to South Africa, fell in love with the country, ended up at the James Sedgwick distillery. And the rest is history. He got involved with the Distillers Corporation and fell in love with whiskey, was made head of whiskey, and was sent over to Scotland, where he was working with Morrison Bowmore, working with Bowmore, Auchentoshan, and Little Mill. So 4 years spent working around whiskey, and came back to South Africa with the vision to change South African whiskey, to put South African whiskey on the map. And that's what he's done here with this dram. Now they have two brands of whiskey under the James Sedgwick distillery. There's the Baines Cape Mountain, which has won many awards, which is a grain whiskey, which uses 100% South African maize. And the single malt version, which is Three Ships, which we're about to try in a minute. Now, they produce grain whiskey for about 9 months of the year at the James Sedgwick distillery, and single malt whiskey for about 2 months of the year. And the rest of the time, I know what you're thinking, my maths is bad. No, the rest of the time is for maintenance. And this is the first independent bottling of anything from Three Ships outside of South Africa or in the world, and the first bottling of James Sedgwick, independent bottling of James Sedgwick distillery outside of South Africa. So that's super exciting. It's been bottled by the Boutique Whiskey Company, who many of you might know for their hilarious and really cool cartoonish labels, but also for the left field choices, the kind of whiskies that they choose. They're not choosing kind of classic Scottish whiskies. They're choosing kind of interesting, new, innovative distilleries to bottle, and this is a prime example of that. Now, this is matured in first fill bourbon casks, and then has been matured in Pedro Ximénez casks. Pedro Ximénez, if you don't know, is a type of sherry, and it's the sweetest of all the sherries. It's an amazing fortified wine. It's beautiful. It's super dark. It's dates, figs, Christmas. It's a classic dessert wine. It's just one of my favorite drinks, Pedro Ximénez. So we can expect from this lots of those notes from the Pedro Ximénez cask, lots of dates, figs, honey, really dark fruit. It's bottled at 53.7% ABV. So if you do want to add a drop of water to this, I would recommend it. Like I've said previously, if you've never seen me before on these pour and sip tastings, I like to try the whiskey neat first before adding water. But then I might add water if I sense that there may be a need for water and it might open the whiskey up. Now, this bottle has been limited to 1,150 bottles. So it's a small batch release, as most of the stuff that the Boutique Whiskey Company do is. And I'd really advise you, if you really like this, to buy a bottle. All of the bottles from tonight will be available on Master of Malt, usually with pour and sip. We have them in our member store. So if you do become a member, and you would get 10%, sometimes more, off of the bottle from the Pour and Sip store. So it's another reason to join and become a Pour and Sip member. Let's get trying. And here's to the end of 2020, the first dram of tonight that we're sharing together. And let me know what you guys are getting on the nose and what you're tasting and what you're smelling. This is an open forum. Please let me know what you guys are getting. So cheers to everybody. And here's to a better 2021. Now, for me, instantly, I'm getting these wonderful Pedro Jimenez notes: dates, figs, dark Manuka honey, brown sugar, muscovado sugar in particular. Lots of vanilla notes, but there's a spicy element to this as well. It's definitely coming from the wood. There's definitely a woody note to this. I assume this is going to be quite a cask-driven whiskey, and that has kind of picked up a lot of those notes from the bourbon cask and then from the sherry cask. Just a couple of comments coming here. Jody saying, evening all, drams in Dundee. Hello, Jody. Katie Joseph. Amazing idea doing this tasting on New Year's Eve lockdown 2020. I agree with you, Katie. I'm super happy that the guys in Pour and Sip have decided to do this, because it's a really nice way for us to kind of finish this year. So again, let me know what you guys are getting. Like I said, I'm getting all those kind of dates, figs, honey, and dark Manuka, honey and muscovado sugar. Please let me know what you guys are getting. I'm going to go for my first sip now. Now, if you're new to us, it's nice to leave it on the first taste under your tongue, just for a couple of seconds, maybe 5 seconds. That way the flavors will really come out. Just a couple more comments. Cheers. Someone, I can't pronounce your name here. Alvaro is drinking Tamdu 12, another wonderful sherry dram. Hello from Hans. Someone else is drinking the Balvenie 12, which is an absolute classic. There's no more of a classic entry-level whiskey than the Balvenie 12. Katie Joseph, you really get those PX notes on the nose. I totally agree with you, because I love Pedro Jimenez, as I was saying. Getting honey notes, Joe DM. I totally agree with you. For me, it's like a really dark honey. It's not like a light blossom honey. It's a really dark kind of, like I said, the muscovado sugar and the dark honey there. I'm going to give this another taste before, again. So yeah, I think this is like drinking Christmas Day in a glass. It's got all those wonderful sherry notes of the figs, raisins, prunes, which are so beautiful. And the one thing I really notice about this is quite how spicy it is. There's so much wood influence coming from the cask here in this dram that it's really quite spicy, but it's lovely on the tongue. It leaves this kind of spicy kind of note on the tongue. There's a hint of chili here in the finish. And I don't know about anyone else, this is going to be a really strange tasting note for everybody here, especially if you're coming from around the world and you never got these. But for me, on the finish, I'm getting these wonderful notes of Parma violets, which were a kind of sweet that we get in this country, the kind of purpley kind of sweet. When people say, what did they taste of? I used to say, purple. They tasted of purple. This is what I'm getting. The finish is really like Parma violets. It's a lovely, long, lingering finish. I'm going to go in for this one again. Again, please let me know what you guys are getting. Now, one thing that is often not mentioned when doing whiskey tastings is the coating. How does it feel? The mouth feel. This is a really wonderful oily whiskey that coats your mouth when you drink it. Happy New Year as well to you, W. Pennell. I don't know your first name as it's not written here. Lord Crispy, very strong. Yes, oddly, I get curry turmeric on the nose and lots of lingering pepper on the palate. Like I said, the spice of this is really, really coming through. It's really quite spicy. So I do get it with the white pepper or maybe cracked pepper. And it's there on my tongue still, but it's a wonderful feeling. I love that from whiskies. Glenn Cross is coming to us from Livingston. Lev P, drinking the Three Ships, beautiful aroma, very strong. I totally agree. This is 53.7%. It is strong and it feels like 53.7%. So I would advise to maybe add a drop of water, but I love the spiciness of this. So don't add too much water because that could kind of dilute that wonderful wood spice that you're getting. It's just a punchy wood notes that you're getting from this whiskey. So I do advise you to maybe be careful with the water, not add too much of it to keep those kind of woody notes intact. But this is definitely going to hold water at 53.7%. It is strong. Fiona is saying, this is all very new to me. I'm not a regular whiskey drinker, but I'm definitely got Muscovado sugar. Fiona, that's perfect. And also, this is one of the reasons why Pour and Sip is amazing. This is for anyone who's starting on their whiskey journey, whether you get all those tasting notes. I've always said that whiskey, we're like detectives. We're kind of accessing our memory bank. And the more you drink and the more you understand whiskey, the more you kind of have more flavor notes to access. And that's the awesome thing about tasting notes. So you will suddenly get all sorts of notes that come from your memory bank that you can kind of access. And that's the great thing about this, is we're all discussing this together. So we're all going to get our own. There's no right or wrong answer. Anyone can be right. We all have different flavor palettes. DJ Yorkie. I love that name, DJ Yorkie. Happy New Year, everyone. Happy New Year, DJ Yorkie. I'm sampling Firefly Apple Pie Moonshine. I'm picking up apple and pie. Have a good one, everyone. Apple Pie Moonshine sounds awesome. I love moonshine. Jeff Worsley, definitely easier with a drop of water. I would assume that that would be the case because it is quite a spicy whiskey. So at 53%, you are going to want to drop some of that alcohol and it might open it up quite a bit. So I'm pleased you're saying that. So we've got quite a lot of whiskey to get through tonight. So I just want to make sure that we get through all of that within the hour because I don't want to go over. We've all got our New Year's Eve celebrations. So I really like this one. I have to say it's a real big surprise for me, and we're getting the chance to drink South African whiskey. South African whiskey, who would have thought? Well, that's the awesome thing about whiskey these days. There's such a growing desire for whiskey, and the customers are really, really wanting to try new things, that places like South Africa are now being able to release whiskey on the commercial. I mean, the Three Ships is the only, James Sedgwick Distillery is the only commercial whiskey distillery in Africa, not just South Africa. So, yeah, this is a really great moment to try South African whiskey. Johnny Westcar, turmeric is a great call. Thanks for that. That's an awesome tasting note, I really have to say. Alistair saying, I don't know if it was a subliminal messaging, but I got a finish which was like having a Parma Violet on the back of my tongue. Alistair, it probably wasn't, because it really is there. I'm really surprised that more people might not be getting this. It's like I can't explain it, but it tastes like Parma Violets. It's not a bad thing. I loved Parma Violets. I was speaking to my wife a while ago, and she said that she never liked Parma Violets. Never understood that. They're an amazing sweet. They were my first one in my penny bag. I just missed a few here, so I just want to make sure I get to all of yours. The Parma Violets at the end there, Glen Cross, absolutely. Rafint is saying, sherry for New Year, 23-year-old Alexander Murphy sherry. Wow, 23-year-old sherry, that's going to be really good. Foundry Brew Pub, lovely to share tasting notes, something I'm looking to do more with our spirits in 2021. Having some Monnick mead this evening. Great, this is the whole point of Pour and Sip, sharing tasting notes. That's exactly what it's all about. Don't worry, sir, there's always time for whiskey, says Gursawak. I can't pronounce your name properly, obviously, this is your avatar. Drop of water really opens this one up, Lord Crispier. Yeah, I think we're all in agreement with that. The Parma Violets thing, I'm pleased that all of you guys are picking that up. I thought I'd be really strange here and everyone be going, Parma Violets, what are you talking about? But I'm really pleased you guys are picking that up. Let's move on, because I want to make sure that we get through all of these. Now, the next one, we're heading to Scotland, much more traditional. I'm going to put this down here. There's every chance that I might kick that, so you might hear a glass smashing. Sorry, this is the great thing about home and remote tasting sessions, is anything could really happen. So we're going for the Loch Lomond 18-year-old. Now, let's pour it again. I'm just going to speak to you for a brief minute about this. I don't want to discuss too much. I want us to really discuss the tasting notes that we're getting. Now, I did have a little taste of this one beforehand, and I have to say, I have not tried much from Loch Lomond. So I was really excited to try this one. And man, oh man, this nose is weird, but in a good way. So you'll see soon. And I'm sure you guys will see what I'm seeing, but it's and smell what I'm smelling. But anyway, Loch Lomond, founded in 1966. A great year for any of the English people here, as we won the World Cup in that year, as I'm sure you guys remember. It's a Highland distillery based in Alexandria. Loch Lomond is one of the most unique Scottish distilleries. There really is nowhere like Loch Lomond. Why? Well, because they're pretty much one of the only places, the only Scottish distilleries that can produce grain whiskey and single malt whiskey all under the same roof. Why is that? They have many different types of stills. I don't want to go too far into detail about this, but they have 2 pot stills, which are those stills that we recognize when we think about Scottish distilleries, the bulb at the bottom and then the line arm like a swan neck. But they also have 4 what are called Lomond stills, which are like a pot still at the bottom, which is like a bulb, but a long neck, like a continuous still, which is produced for grain whiskey. Why do they have these? Why were these invented? Well, they have rectifying plates going up the still, and you can move these plates around in order to kind of get the type of flavor profile you want from your new make spirit. Just one thing to remember is the longer and thinner the neck, the more floral, cleaner and fresher the spirit, you're going to get the lighter spirit. The shorter and fatter the neck of the still, the heavier and the meatier of the spirit, you're going to get the bolder kinds of profile. What Loch Lomond can do is they can produce all of these types using the same still, which makes them one of the only Scottish distilleries that can do this, that they can produce any type of flavor profile. They have Highland style, Speyside style, Islay style, all using those kind of stills. This is really interesting, and they are the only distillery, literally the only distillery, that can call themselves and make a single blend, basically a blended whiskey under one roof. That is super interesting. It's basically much more like a Japanese distillery, like Suntory, which can choose from their different houses, take lots of whiskies, blend them together and make their blend. Loch Lomond is now trying more to go on the upper end of the spectrum. It was usually associated with a blended whiskey, kind of high commissioner, which, you know, is a kind of lower end blended whiskey. Now, since the takeover by the Loch Lomond Distillers Group, which also own Glen Scotia, which I love, by the way, and Little Mill, they're aiming to kind of boost the range and make it much more kind of for the whiskey lovers, the whiskey connoisseurs. We'll see if they're successful. Someone's just told me my pronunciation is on point, sir. Well, if you're talking about pronunciation, wait till the dram afterwards, because that's going to test everyone's pronunciation. Happy New Year from Vinoteca, from Albania. Cheers with a Maker's Mark 46. Maker's Mark 46, what a bourbon. And cheers, Albania. We really are coming from all over the world. So again, with the Loch Lomond, cheers to everybody. Now, I have to say that smelling this before, I don't know what it is with my nose, but this is funky. It's super funky. Not necessarily in a bad way, but it's like I'm getting these kind of funky, smoky notes, but also kind of cheesy notes. It sounds really bad, like it would make a really bad whiskey, but it's not. Alistair is saying runny honey. I get that as well. Like the Three Ships was a much darker kind of dark honey. This is a much lighter blossom honey. Stan Windias, I've got an Isle of Rasai inaugural release. I've seen loads about that on Instagram, and I'm really excited to try one of those. It's a really, really interesting distillery. Happy New Year from Panama, Central America. Wow, we really are coming from everywhere tonight. That is absolutely awesome. So if anyone's trying the Loch Lomond, please let me know what you think of it on the nose, and we'll give it a little try. Once again, Jeff is saying he likes the Loch Lomond. It's quite smoky. Absolutely. Alistair's saying there's a bit of smoke. Yeah, it's not like when we think of Islay, it's not like a smoke peated monster. It's like a whiff of smoke, but it's like a woody smoke. Claire Hansen, it almost smells like sake to me. Yeah, it's got that fermented vibe that you might get from sake. Absolutely. I totally get that. Yeah, just to me, it's like earthy vegetal notes that are savory. That you don't often get with a lot of whiskies, especially Highland whiskies. I tend to get like sweeter notes, and this is quite like moldy, funky notes, Dunwich Warehouse notes. If you've ever been in a Dunwich Warehouse, that musty smell you get from it is coming up from this glass. Katie Joseph, I see what you mean. It's a bit like what sits on the nose. It's the cheesy note that I'm getting. It's there. It's there. Let's give it a try. Cheers, everybody. Oh, wow. I have to say I much prefer the palate to the nose. And it's one of those rare whiskies that doesn't taste like the nose smells, which is really interesting. I'm just going to have a sip of water. Now, please let me know what you guys are getting when you're drinking it on the palate. Now, I'm getting lots of kind of toffee notes, milky kinds of notes. Yeah, and there are those funky elements, the kinds of funky wood kinds of note, damp notes that are coming through on the palate. Yeah, lots of baking spice as well, things like clove and nutmeg, like a nutty kind of notes. Mm. It's really good, and I have to say this is my first experience with Loch Lomond actually, and I'm really quite impressed with it. It's quite a unique distillery, like I was saying. It's quite an industrial distillery as well. It's not what when you look at pictures of Loch Lomond, it's not exactly what you expect from a Scottish distillery, those beautiful kind of Glengoynes, for example. They produce around, I think it's 80 million litres a year of grain whiskey and 5 million litres of single malt whiskey a year. So it's a very industrial level whiskey distillery. But with their new range, the 12-year-old, the 18-year-old, they're really kind of aiming this whiskey at the new kind of drinker, staying away from the kind of idea of high commissioner and those kind of low-end blends. And you can really taste it with this nose. Like I said, a wonderful, funky kind of nose. How are you guys thinking, comparing this to the Three Ships? I know they're quite incomparable, but what are you guys saying? Which one are you preferring at the moment? I have to say they are so super different. The Three Ships had those wonderful sweet dates, muscovado sugar, Christmassy notes, whereas this one is much funkier, quite smoky as well. Not a peated smoke, like I said, like an Islay whiskey, but a much kind of a woody kind of smoke, I would call it, a vegetal kind of smoke. Maybe there's a bit of heather kind of smoke in there as well, which you would get from Highland peat instead of Islay peat, which comes across as much more medicinal as it's closer to the sea, whereas Highland peat is much closer to fields and trees. So it's much, get many more notes of heather in there. It's much earthier than the Islay peat, which is more medicinal iodine. It's really good. I really like this one. Please let me know. We can all mark them out of 10 if you want. If you want to mark them out of 10, please feel free to let me know your markings. That's also a really interesting thing to do. I do that on my Instagram account when I review whiskies. I do tend to kind of give them a mark out of 100. Anything over 80 is really good. Anything over 90 is superb. So feel free to do the same thing. Okay, let's move on to what's the next one? We've got I want to go with the Daluaine. I said there was going to be a pronunciation part here. Let's move on to this one. Now, this is the Daluaine 16-year-old. Obviously, I would have said it was pronounced Daluaine, obviously, because why wouldn't you? There are many Scottish distilleries which have this weird pronunciation. One of my favourites is Loch. Actually, ironically, there's a bottle behind me, which I would usually pronounce as Ledaig. I think anyone would pronounce that as Ledaig. It's actually Loch, and you will soon see this actually in our next box in January for the Pour and Sip box. We will have a Loch for everybody to try. But this is another one pronounced Daluaine, and it's the 16-year-old. Let's pour this, and then we'll give this one a try. This one I'm most excited about. This sounds really good. So let's pour this one. Again, if you only want to pour a little bit of it, but you don't want to pour the whole thing, feel free. That's fine. Just a little bit of it. Oh, I can instantly smell that I'm going to love this one. The Daluaine 16. Just a couple of comments here. So these have all come through to me right at the same time. I feel like it's Jeff is saying he likes the Loch Lomond, quite smoky. Certainly a unique nose from Katie. Copite is saying we'll need to subscribe. So for this evening, a Lefroy to bid you a better new year from North Wales. Ah, Lefroy, my favourite. Guess, do you like Jura? I really like Jura. Actually, in our last Pour and Sip box, we tried the Jura 21, the Tide, which was one of my favourite whiskies that I tried in a very long time. Beautiful virgin oak spice, wonderful, wonderful dram, and a cool, unique place that we discussed. And yeah, I'm a really big fan. Adele Carpel, Happy New Year from the Carpel whiskey drinkers. Happy New Year to you guys too. Jeff Worsley, oh, that's nice. Jeff, what's your Instagram tag? London Whiskey Guy without the E. So whiskey without the E. Please do follow me for awesome content, unique content, obviously. Daniel Hockman, 3 ships for me. Alistair, the first. Loch Lomond, but won't now. Alistair. Jeff, I'm not a PT Smoky whiskey fan. Ian is love PT whiskey, but it's a bit like Marmite. You either love it or you hate it. That's exactly it. Now, I think with the Loch Lomond, it's got a funky element, so you will either kind of love that or hate it. Daniel Hockman, 3 ships. Jodie, 3 ships has been her favourite. Fiona Ken, much nicer smell. Look, I totally agree with you. The Daluaine is going to be a much nicer smell than the Loch Lomond. In terms of its sweeter honey, it's a Speyside distillery. I'll get on to that. So Whiskey is Art. Whiskey is Art. I definitely follow you on Instagram. Hello. All right, mate. Happy New Year. Happy New Year to you. Rally Face. Cheers. Best new wishes from Germany. How's Macallan Reflection? I've not tried the Macallan Reflection yet, I have to be honest. I actually poured myself as a special treat. It's up there, actually, right at the top shelf. Obviously, it was the Macallan Rare Cask, which I have to say is just one of the best whiskies I've ever tried. So I love Macallan. Anyway, Daluaine. This is a kind of unknown Speyside distillery, let's say, and is predominantly used for Johnny Walker. It's a distillery that's set up as basically a Speyside distillery that most of its output from its 3 wash stills and its 3 spirit stills goes into Johnny Walker. There's not much more to say to it than that. But Glenn says the Loch Lomond. Great, that's interesting because most people have been saying the 3 ships. It's great to hear somebody say Loch Lomond there. And this forms part of the Flora and Fauna range from Diageo. Diageo are a spirits company that own hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of international conglomerate that own many, many distilleries. And the Flora and Fauna range was a range of Diageo whiskies that was released in 1991 when they were United Distillers before being Diageo, to showcase, let's say, the more unknown distilleries in their portfolio, to give single malt lovers the chance to buy a bottle of a Diageo distillery like Daluaine that is predominantly used for blends, but in single malt form. So this is a really cool idea. The bottles were never actually called Flora and Fauna. This was a name that was named, which was coined by the late whiskey writer Michael Jackson. I'm not going to do it. I'm just not going to do it. Maybe if there's someone else here, I would do the Michael Jackson voice. It's not that Michael Jackson. But anyway, late whiskey writer, famed whiskey writer Michael Jackson. And he called it Flora and Fauna. Why was that? If you actually take a very close look, if you have got the bottle, you will see there's a little badger there on the label. So all the labels for the Flora and Fauna range for all the distilleries done by Diageo depicted the animals and the nature that surrounded, the environment that surrounded the distillery. Daluaine is a very classic sherried whiskey, and was once, back when Kleinleash, which is one of my other favourite Diageo distilleries, which is a very waxy kind of whiskey. Back when that was being refurbished, they kind of used and changed the fermentation period of Daluaine to be more waxy, to replace that part in the Johnny Walker blend. And now it's much heavier, it's much meatier, and it provides weight and depth to those blends. Let's give it a smell. It's bottled at 43%. And like I said, it's a beautiful colour. It's a sherry cask. Diageo, as always, are very tight-lipped. They've not said what's in this. There's no indication. You can't find anywhere what's in this, which is classic. I would assume instantly that there must be some Oloroso cask in this. It's a very heavily sherried whiskey. Aaron is saying it's incredible. I have to say, so far, instantly on the nose, I'm loving this. It's everything I want from a sherried whiskey. Christmas, instantly Christmas, honey, dates. Glencross, the Daluaine is sadly just like most of the commercial Highland malts. Glencross also, Loch Lomond for him. Yeah, I mean, some people may say that about Daluaine. I think it's interesting that Diageo want to kind of showcase, and this is actually the only bottling, an official bottling you can get of the Daluaine. Otherwise, the only way you taste it is really in blends, also much more expensive whiskies. So the 16-year-old is the only official bottling you'll get of that. And that's the same for many of these distilleries in the Diageo range, like Blair Athol, for example. Lev is saying, Daluaine is fantastic. Sorry, I'm a bit behind. Savouring. Katie Joseph, the colour is beautiful. Japanese whiskey love. I definitely follow you on Instagram as well. Love sherry whiskey. I have a Glenlivet 21 archive open at the moment. It's sublime. That is a superb dram, I have to say. Absolutely, this is all sherry. It's those beautiful Christmas notes, vanilla, cream. I get this kind of lovely brandy butter. I don't know if that's because it's Christmas still, and yesterday actually had the leftover Christmas pudding with a bit of brandy butter, which is one of my favorites. I definitely get notes of brandy butter in this. Figs, almonds, prunes, lovely, deep, rich prunes. This is rich, opulent whiskey. That is whiskey. It's just, to me, it smells everything that whiskey should be. It's a really beautiful smell. It's one of those ones, dessert whiskey, absolutely. It's one of those ones that you're just you smell and you instantly go, oh yeah, that's it. Coke Wings. What's your thoughts on Suntory Reserve? Not tried it, to be honest with you, Coke Wings. So I really can't comment on that. I'm a big fan of Suntory and a lot of the Suntory range. The Hibiki Harmony behind me, and we recently actually. So yeah, I mean, I'm a huge fan. I haven't actually tried that, unfortunately. If you tell me it's good, maybe I'll go out and get it and review it. Fiona, I could definitely go for this one. I've got honey, but a good clover honey, not just an old one. Absolutely. In Sutherland, lovely bit of Christmas pudding coming through. Ian, that's what I'm getting on this dram. It is all just Christmas pudding, and it's the greatest time to be drinking. So we're drinking a dram like this. It seems very, very fitting. So again, if you do really like any of these drams, you can visit the Master of Malt store. They're all available. Let's give this one a try. I actually haven't tried this one yet. I've just been smelling it and the beautiful aromas coming from the glass. Oh yeah. Well, I love a whiskey that makes me go, oh yeah, this is one of those. I love this. It's just beautiful. Sherried whiskey. It reminds me of maybe like a weaker Aberlour, Buna, that kind of classic Speyside character, honey, fresh, aromatic, but at the same time, the Christmas notes from the sherry, the figs, the prunes. What are you guys getting? Let me know. A lot of you said honey, clover honey, not just any old one. Absolutely. That's really great to be specific with the type of honey you're getting. Like I mentioned before, I was getting dark honey from the first one and a more light blossom honey. Jeff, I was given a bottle of Amrut for Christmas, still unopened, but looking forward to it. Absolutely. There's great stuff coming out of Amrut at the moment, and India in general, Paul John as well. So that's another note. Please let me know what Whiskey Santa got you all for Christmas. Whiskey Santa was very, very kind to me, I have to say. Japanese whiskey lover. I had the Yamazaki 18 for Christmas, my second time trying it, and it's unreal. Japanese whiskey lover. The Yamazaki 18 is one of the greatest drams. I was super, super fortunate to try it when I was in Japan a couple of years back. Only a sample of it. I don't have a bottle here, but it is just one of the greatest drams I've ever tried. It is a shame that we very rarely won't be able to buy many more bottles of it anymore. But talking about the Daluaine, not the Daluaine, the Daluaine. Who is getting those sherried Christmas notes? Who is getting those wonderful figgy pudding notes, Christmas pudding, brandy butter, vanilla, cream, honey, cinnamon, baking spices? Those are the kinds of notes that I'm getting. Please don't be scared if you do want to say what tasting notes you're getting. Like I said, there is no right or wrong answer. That we all have different palates and we all have different memory banks of the flavors that we can access from our memory banks when thinking about whiskey. So please do let me know. There is Alistair, don't get Christmas pudding, but a good blend of smooth, warming flavors. Maybe no pudding because I had Kiro before. Alistair, we tried. Are you having the Kiro rye whiskey? Because we had that in the last box in Pour and Sip, and that's possibly one of my favourite Pour and Sip drams I've tried from any of the boxes. The Kiro rye, it was just phenomenal. Alistair saying Cavalan Soloist Port was one of the several for Christmas and my new fave. Not tried that one. Again, Taiwanese whiskey, really world whiskey is really coming up, and port cask, that sounds absolutely great. Yeah, Katie Joseph, creamy Christmas pud. Yeah, totally getting that. Creamy Christmas pud, lots and lots of brandy butter. It's a rich, opulent, elegant whiskey. Like I said, it's a shame that Diageo don't often give us more information about what's going on in these drams. But like I said, I would assume there's Oloroso sherry in this, and it's first fill, because by first fill I mean that it's not been used before. It's just a wonderfully warming dram. Johnny Westcott, Glenfiddich 12, and the Highland Park Valfather for Christmas. Now, look, the Glenfiddich 12 just does not get more classic than that. I don't think there is a bar that should be without that dram. It is just an incredible dram. And at the price level, you just don't get better than that. It's really a wonderful dram. Highland Park Valfather. Highland Park do some amazing things. And I love the packaging. I love Highland Park and the innovative things that they're doing. Joe DM, Whiskey Santa bought us the Arran Bear Barley 10-year-old. Must have been on the nice list this year. Jody, I love Arran. I actually have up there, again, I don't want to get it down, but the Arran, I've got an Arran Sauternes cask, I've got an Arran Amarone cask. Arran is an amazing distillery and are doing some incredible things at the moment. I know Ralphie gave Arran 10 his whiskey of the year, and it was much deserved. It's a really, really amazing distillery, great packaging, non-chill filtered, no added colouring, amazing distillery. Alistair, I got it yesterday from the members club, the Kiro. Good for you, Alistair. It was one of the best drams I've tried, so I'm pleased you bought yourself a bottle of that. And it just goes to show, if you do really like these, you can go to the Pour and Sip store if you become a member, and you can get yourself one of these bottles at a discounted price. What more could you want? Glenn, the Sassenach from Loch Lomond for Christmas. Never tried that, but I will be trying much more Loch Lomond after having tried the 18. I always experience Start Annecy in Speyside range, and I get that as well. Gusawak 91. Sorry if I pronounced that wrong. I get that as well. Anise, it gives it a little spice, a little kind of aniseedy kind of note. Definitely get that in Speyside whiskies, 100%. Foundry Brew Pub, agreed. Absolutely, good for you. I mean, it's wonderfully classic Speyside dram, classic sherried dram. Let's move on. I could sit with this one for a while, but I'm actually going to leave this one for a bit, and I'm going to be drinking this afterwards because it's beautiful. And I think with even more time in the glass, this is going to open up even more. Katie Joseph, the Arran 21 is an incredible dram. Luckily, someone bought that for me for Christmas, and I can concur. It is absolutely incredible dram. Yeah, beautiful nose on this. I have to say, one of the better noses. And a wonderful Christmas vibe. Let's move on, guys, before we run out of time. The next one I'm going to go for is the Basil Hayden's Bourbon. Let's go to America. Basil Hayden's Bourbon. Let's give it a pour. Now, I'm sure you've all heard of Jim Beam. If you haven't, Jim Beam is just one of the most famous bourbon distilleries in Kentucky. It's up there with Jack Daniels. And Basil Hayden's forms part of their small batch range, which are 4 different whiskies. There's the Basil Hayden's, Booker's Bourbon, Baker's Bourbon, and Knob Creek. Knob Creek is also extremely famous. Now, Basil Hayden's is the lowest in ABV of this range, and it's at 40% ABV. Now, in America, they tend to talk about proof when they're talking about bourbon, so it's 80 proof. If you ever see proof written, all that means is we're talking ABV, 40 ABV, double it is 80 proof, 50% ABV, 100 proof. Ian Sutherland got himself a 16-year-old Lagavulin for Christmas. Ian Sutherland, I don't think there are many better peated Islay whiskies at that price than the Lagavulin 16. If someone said to me, what are the best Islay whiskies? I'd say the Ardbeg 10, the Lafroig 10, and the Lagavulin 16. Those 3, you start with those 3. They are the best peated whiskies on the market, but the Lagavulin 16 is just a phenomenal dram. Carolina Tautaura, creamy. Sorry if I pronounced that wrong. I'm sorry to everyone I've pronounced whose name's wrong tonight. Highland Park, overall Lechig 18, my favourite. Lechig is an underrated dram from the Tobermory distillery. If you do sign up to Pour and Sip, we have a Lechig next month, the new Sinclair Rioja cask. And I love Lechig. It rivals any of the Islay Peaty whiskey drams. I really, really recommend it. Coke Wings. I finished my bottle of Yamazaki 12 the other day. Splendid whiskey. Yeah. I mean, Yamazaki is just, it, you know, you cannot go wrong. It's such a shame that many of the bottles have been discontinued. I really hope that in the future the distilleries are able to keep up with the demand and keep giving us some beautiful stuff and get some single malts back on the market. But anyway, let's talk about Basil Hayden's. So part of the Jim Beam small batch range, this is the lowest in proof. However, it's the highest in rye. Now in America, instead of, we talk about mash bill. What does mash bill mean? It's the blend, the recipe for the grains they use. Now, usually Jim Beam, the standard is 77% corn, 13% rye, and the rest is malted barley, 10% malted barley. The rest of the Jim Beam range, that's standard for Jim Beam. Now, the rest of the Booker's Bourbon, the Knob Creek, and the Baker's Bourbon, they all come in at that. This Basil Hayden, why is it different? It's higher in rye. So it's lower in corn percentage, and it's 23% rye in the mash bill. So with more rye as a grain in the whiskey, we're going to get some kind of spicier notes, some kind of more aniseedy notes that I sometimes get, black pepper from rye. So interesting to see what the high rye content gives to this whiskey. It's named after Basil Hayden Sr., who was famous back in the 1800s for his famous high rye mash bills back in the day when he was working for Jim Beam, and this is named after him. So part of the Jim Beam small batch range of 4 whiskies. Jim Beam, very famous Kentucky distillery, and this is a really interesting bottle. I have to say, if you go and look for this bottle, it's an awesome package design. That's all I can say. It's got a beautiful bottle design with paper, like a scroll, let's say, and a little metal kind of clamp that clamps the scroll onto the bottle. It's really cool. Jeff is saying, definitely want another bottle of Blue Spot, sold out everywhere. Blue Spot, Green Spot, Yellow Spot, Red Spot, it's all amazing stuff. Luxy Frixu, get Adam Talbot on. I don't know who that is. Basil Hayden's bourbon, let's give it a go. So on the nose, it's really, really, can I say bourbony? Wonderful, wonderful nose. Vanilla, very, very heavy kind of vanilla, creamy vanilla that you often get with bourbon. The higher rye content is giving it, for me, a kind of spicier kind of element on the nose. Here's another thing, like kind of toasted bread kind of note, burnt toast even. Please let me know what you guys are getting. And kind of burnt toast, maybe like unstoppable force of will. What do you think of Man O'World's Annandale Distillery? I'm sorry, but I've never actually tried anything from the Annandale Distillery, so I'd be interested to see what you guys think of that one. Can't pronounce your name. Sorry, tell us about some different kinds of rums. I love rum. I recently tried a Hampton Estate rum, which was one of the best things I've ever tried. Best rums I've ever tried. Funky rum. And I've tried recently some really good rum cask whiskies. I've got a Springbank here behind me, which has been finished in rumwood, which is beautiful. Fiona Ken, very little smell on this bourbon. Disappointed by this so far, but not tasted. Look, I have to say, at 40%, I think that Jim Beam are advertising this as an entry-level bourbon that is possibly good for use as well in cocktails. And if you go on the website, they are definitely kind of putting forward that it could be used in cocktails, which I wouldn't say you would with the Baker's or the Booker's bourbon, being that they're both about 58 and 60%. 40%, it will be good neat, but you can also use it to add to cocktails. And Jeff is saying a material smell, leathery, suede. Claire smells very sweet to me. Claire, it is super duper sweet. I have to say, I really like this nose. It's like a very good entry-level bourbon on the nose. Yes, it's not a kind of Four Roses small batch, like heavy kind of bourbon smell, but it's a wonderfully kind of fresh bourbon smell. Toasted butter, crispy bread, brioche buns, kind of chocolate chip brioche buns. Lord Crispy, very sweet on the nose. Vanilla, slightly spicy. Burnt toast is good. Yeah, vanilla is the first thing that comes out of me. That's a lot of bourbons will give you loads of vanilla, but the burnt toast is definitely there as well. Let's give this one a little try and see what we all make of it. Yeah, look, I have to say that it's quite a thin palate, but that's to be expected at 40%. But what it makes up for in that is this beautiful, wonderful vanilla toasted brioche. Like I said before, those notes, cloves. There's a hint of spice from the rye. Actually, when I say a hint of spice, there's actually quite a lot of spice from the rye. It's coming across as black pepper, but star anise is another good option, like someone had mentioned before. It's a lovely little spice that lingers a little bit on the tongue there, which is really, really lovely. Let me just read out some more of these comments. There's quite a few coming through. Japanese whiskey lover, I've had the Michter's 10-year-old rye, and it was superb. Got a 15-year-old whistle pig for Christmas and looking forward to trying that. I have to say that when I'm talking about my favorite American ryes, Michter's just straight rye is pretty much up there. I've never tried the 10-year-old. Maybe you can send me a dram because I've heard it's absolutely incredible. Masood, cheers. Goosewak, 91. Booker's Kathleen batch is class. Goes like butter. Yeah, I've not tried much of the small batch Booker stuff, but I mean, I've tried Booker's bourbon. It's really wonderful. Johnny Westcar, grace tasting, guys. Thank you. Andrew is a great host. Big yourself right up, Johnny Westcar. Thank you very much. Appreciate the kind words. Tips welcome. I'm totally joking, but I do appreciate kind words. They go right in. Jeff Worsley, definitely a mixer. Yeah, I have to agree with you, Jeff. I think this would be amazing in an old fashioned. I think this would be amazing with tonic as a highball. I think this would go really, really nice with many different kind of bourbon-led cocktails. Jeff Worsley is nice without water. I personally wouldn't add water to this one. It's quite at 40%. I don't think it needs water. Again, no one is right or wrong in this. If you do want to add water to it, please go ahead and add water. It really isn't a problem. But I do agree with you, Jeff. Katie Joseph, that's definitely an easy drinking whiskey. It is an easy drinking whiskey. This is the kind of whiskey I can imagine myself sitting down, coming home from work back when we all used to work back in the day, before COVID. And I'd sit down on the sofa and I'd want to pour myself something that I just like, you know, don't have to think about it too much. Something that is just an easy sipper, sweet, and can kind of make the day finish on a good note. This is that one. I have to say, I really, really like this. I really, really like this. The high rye recipe really works for me. I do like high rye whiskey. Jim Beam do a great high rye Jim Beam version, but this is great. Now, if you are thinking to yourself, wow, the mash bill sounds exactly the same as Old Grandad, then you would be right. Old Grandad is another Jim Beam. It's the exact same mash bill as another Jim Beam product, much older than Basil Hayden's. Why have they not changed the recipe? They packaged this differently. I think they're just advertising this at a different kinds of clientele. The Old Grandad is a very, very old recipe. But if you do want something a bit more, then there's the Old Grandad 114, which is a higher ABV. But for me, I would love a bottle of this at my bar because it's a classic, easy drinker. Sit down at night, just something really easy to drink. I really, really like this. Jeff Worsley, the Bullet Rye from a few years ago is really good. I love Bullet Rye. Gussie Wack with ginger ale. That's a great shout. Like I said, as a highball with ginger ale, tonic water would be lovely. Fiona, tastes better than it smells, but there's a lovely aftertaste of vanilla and cream. Claire Hansen, I'm not a bourbon girl, but this I can get on board with. Claire, that's exactly what I'm talking about because I think this is the kind of bourbon that will get you into bourbon. It's an entry-level bourbon that is... it's slightly thinner, but it's there for you to kind of get you into the kind of heavier bourbon stuff. So if you didn't like bourbon before, I think this is going to be the gateway for you that's going to make you like bourbon. I think it's really nice. Lord Crispy, I drink a lot of rye and I get the spice of that here. You said thin and that's right. Not normally a bourbon fan, but this is actually really good. Japanese whiskey lover, I got sent a sample myself, so can't. Otherwise, I would. Sorry, don't worry, Japanese whiskey lover. I won't take offence to you not sending me a sample of the Michter's 10 rye. But if anyone does want to send me a sample, let me know in my Instagram, London Whiskey Guy. Send me a message. Katie Joseph could drink a lot of this. Absolutely. I'm going to just quickly move on to the next one, just that we get through all of these in time. But this is a really wonderful bourbon, and I could really drink this. It's really, really lovely, sweet vanilla cream, little high rye content, giving a bit of black pepper spice. Really lovely stuff. But let's move on to the last dram. Sad times, guys. This is the last dram. Let's make this the best one. Well, luckily, we've got a 21-year-old blended whiskey. This is going to be one of the best ones. Big pour and sip there. Guys, if you're enjoying this tasting, please join Pour and Sip Club. We are a subscription service. You'll get 2 of these live tastings a month from your box. And you'll get the chance to buy these bottles at discounted prices. You get the chance to meet members of the community. It's a really, really great concept, and it's a really, really great club to join. So I really, really do recommend that if you are enjoying this and you haven't joined Pour and Sip, to do that. Let's lastly pour ourselves this dram, this blended perspective series from the Berry Brothers and Rudd. I am just going to grab myself another glass and pour this whiskey. Here we go. Last one of the night, guys. Here we go. This is a blended whiskey. Katie Joseph, where has the time gone? This can't be the last one already. It is quite amazing how quickly an hour can go. I'm going to really... Chris Perry, I'm drinking Green Spot. I love Green Spot, Chris Perry. I really do. I love all those Irish whiskies. Yellow Spot, Green Spot, Blue Spot. It's all amazing stuff. Now, this is a collaboration, let's say, between Berry Brothers, who are one of the oldest wine merchants. Back from the 1600s, they were set up. Really one of the oldest wine merchants. It started out as a coffee shop and now have 6 offices internationally. But they also have a whiskey range. And this is their whiskey range, which was a collaboration. Just let me double check the name of this. This was a collaboration with Lindsay Robertson. It's a 21-year-old whiskey. Lindsay Robertson is an artist. And this was the idea that on the bottle, there is a wonderful picture was depicted and painted by Lindsay of Sandalwood Bay in Scotland, kind of dark, kind of somber mood. And this is meant to be a kind of drinking whiskey, looking at the art and really kind of unifying and homogenizing those kind of 2 art forms together. So we experience the art form through the whiskey. Really interesting idea. Just a couple more comments. Tibaros, sorry, I can't. Have you ever tasted a Brazilian whiskey? Try 3 Lobos. Sorry if I've pronounced that wrong. I actually haven't tasted a Brazilian whiskey. Again, please contact me on Instagram if you want to recommend me anything. I would love to taste a Brazilian whiskey. Japanese whiskey love, I'm having a Nika from the barrel tonight for a non-age statement whiskey. It's incredible. I have to say that Nika from the barrel is just one of the best non-age statement whiskies there is. It's super cheap. It's a Japanese whiskey. It is absolutely wonderful. There is always a bottle of that in my house. It is just one of the absolute best. Unstoppable Force of Will, Oban Distillery Edition. I recently actually tried for the first time the Oban 14. Absolutely wonderful dram. Can't believe it had taken me so long. Gusawak Island, the land of Redbreast. Redbreast 12. One of the best out there. Jeff Whiskey. They were the creators of Cutty Sark as well. So back in the Prohibition era, Berry Rudd and Brothers, they were also the inventors, the creators of Cutty Sark, who we notoriously know. They actually sold it in the end to Edrington. They also owned Glenrothes, but they also sold that to Edrington. So really interesting. Cutty Sark, I mean, if you've ever seen Mad Men, which was set in the Prohibition era, Cutty Sark was featured all over Mad Men. It's one of my favorite programs. You can catch it on Netflix. I'm not working on commission for Mad Men, but it always made me want to drink Cutty Sark because it was always stored on Don Draper's bar, and it, along with a bottle of Canadian Club. So I'm sure that some people might comment here to say they have watched Mad Men, but Don Draper really got a lot of people into drinking whiskey, and Cutty Sark and Canadian Club were one of the reasons for that. So Berry Brothers did actually create Cutty Sark. So good shout, Jeff Whiskey. Jeff Worsley, Berry Brothers Speyside blend is great. This perspective sample has a nail varnish note to it. I'm going to actually have a smoke at this one. I have to say, out of all the drams, this is the one I knew very little about. There's nothing written about this, so we really have to play detective on this one. They really haven't given anything away on this blend. There's no information at all. So really interesting. I think maybe the reason for that is they wanted us to look at the art on the bottle and really associate these 2 art forms without thinking too much about what's in the dram, rather than letting our senses kind of engulf us whilst we look at the art. So a really interesting concept, I have to say. Oh yeah, it's more similar to the Daluaine. So lots and lots of creamy vanilla, like I said. Katie Joseph, what's going to be your midnight dram this evening? London whiskey guy. Oh, Katie Joseph, that's a really interesting question. I have loved so far the Daluaine from this. I might save myself that. Otherwise, I'm going to drink this lovely Springbank 21, which was bought for me for Christmas, which was a dream dram of mine. So Whiskey Santa was really super kind to me this year. Fiona Cairn, there's Stilton in this one. Very warming. Okay, I'm going to give this one a try and see what see if there are those notes. Sorry. Now, I think there's a lovely hint of leather on the nose here. It's like an old, you get that from the 21-year-old whiskey. You can really taste the age in this whiskey. Jeff Whiskey's got the thumbs up. I hope the thumbs up might be for what I said about the Cutty Salt, but they might also be for the Perspective series, which is really wonderful stuff. Goosewak says, dropping knowledge bombs. Awesome. That's what I'm here for. The knowledge bombs. I'm dropping them all over the place. Thank you for recognizing. A Japanese whiskey lover. Another art form for short is the Compass Box whiskey range. Again, this will be available at Master of Malt, so I'm sure they won't be upset. But Compass Box is one of my favorites. The Hedonism, which I have here, is one of the most beautiful labels I've ever seen on a whiskey bottle. And it's, yeah, I can't say enough good things about Compass Box. I was recently on a live tasting with Jeff Glazer, who owns Compass Box and set it up, and it's super, super interesting tasting the Peat Monster and the Peat Monster Arcana, really amazing stuff. Katie Joseph, Compass Box is fab. Hedonism, I agree. It's one of the best blended whiskies, blended grain whiskies, sorry, vanilla, creamy, candied corn. Anyway, Perspective series, what are you guys getting? This is the last dram, so please kind of let me know what you guys are getting, because finally, I want to ask you, before we go and say goodbye to everybody, I want to ask you as well, which has been your favorite dram that you have tried tonight? Please let me know. If you have been tasting along with us tonight, please let me know what your favorite dram has been, and we can kind of count up the votes at the end and see which one is the best. Glenn Cross, like the bourbon, this is an easy whiskey to drink, nice and smooth. Glenn, I'm totally with you there. That Basil Hayden's really took me by surprise. I usually like my bourbons at about 60% barrel proof, but that at 40%, I think it's a super easy drinker. Not too complex. You have to think about it. That's why I said one of those, you come home late at night, try it. Really wonderful stuff. Jeff Wolseley is saying, like it after the initial nose. The nose of this Perspective series is really old. You're getting that wonderful kind of Dunnage Warehouse nose, but it's sweet. I would be shocked if there isn't Speyside whiskey in this. Some wonderful honey, creamy honey, beautiful vanilla, prunes, figs, strawberries even, some bit of red fruit and orchard fruits. It's a warming dram, this. It really is a warming dram and a wonderful blended whiskey, I have to say. I'm going to give this one more try before I go to your favourites. So the instant arrival is actually quite spicy, and it coats your mouth with these kind of leathery oak, so much wood at the arrival. You can really taste the cask influence. But then the sweetness arrives and then fades into kind of black pepper towards the aftertaste, the finish. It's a really, really lovely jam, I have to say. Guys, please let me know what your favourites are of the ones we've tried so far. And I will try and read out as many of these comments because they're coming in thick and fast. And I really want to know which everyone thought. Japanese whiskey lover, Hedonism was one of the first whiskies I ever had neat. I agree. It's such an amazing dram. I definitely would be trying that neat. Glenn Cross, like the bourbon. Claire Hansen, silky on the tongue. Yeah, it's really lovely and silky. It's not a big, heavy dram. But it's not thin. It's coating. But yeah, silky is a great word to describe the mouthfeel of this dram. Jeff Wolseley, Daluaine. I'll let you all know. So if you'll stick around, I'll let you know which one was my favourite at the end. So I won't give that away right now. Johnny Westcar, 3 ships. Awesome. Big thanks. Thank you, Johnny Westcar. And thank you for tuning in. Ian Sutherland, 3 ships was my top this evening. A lot of love for the 3 ships right now. Alistair, Daluaine for me. Danny Butty, Lefroy, because I have just joined. Danny, you're so late. But I have to say, Lefroy, You just can't go wrong with Lefroy. The Lefroy 10 cask strength is possibly my favourite whiskey. It might be my favourite whiskey of 2020, the recent batch. Please tune into my Instagram account when you will find out my favourite whiskey of 2020. Scotch Abbey, big boy. You talk about me? I don't know. Katie Joseph, it's hard, but I think Daluaine has to be my fave from this box. Goosewak, fave jam of 2020, Longmorn 16. I love the Longmorn 16. It's a shame it's really kind of not been produced as much. I actually recently tried from the Secret Speyside range, which is also available from Master of Malt, the Longmorn 21, which was absolutely wonderful. Claire Hansen, the Perspective is definitely my favourite. Great shout, Claire. Johnny Westcar, South African whiskey. That's a first for me. It was a first for me as well. And I'm really, really surprised, and I absolutely loved it. Fiona Cairn, thank you for the intro to whiskey. My favourite was Daluaine. Thank you so much, Fiona, for tuning in. It really means a lot to us that you tune in, and this is exactly what we want to get. This is an open community here at Pour and Sip, so please tune in, please subscribe, and we are here for everyone, no matter where you are on your whiskey journey. So I'm pleased that we could be of some use to you tonight. Katie, what's been your favourite? Wait 1 second, Katie. Path Guy, could you tell me more about Ardmore? I wish I could, but I don't have time. The Ardmore Legacy is a great non-age statement dram. And the Ardmore 21 is one of the cheapest 21-year-olds you're going to get on the market that is a super good dram. But for another time, Goose, I'm going to try your recommendation. Thanks, mate. Lord Crispy, the Perspective is lovely and thick and opulent. Great word. Red fruit, yes. Sweet while savoury too. Top of the list today. Thank you for tuning in. And I agree with all of those tasting notes. It's such a rich and opulent whiskey. Great, elegant whiskey. Daniel Hockman, my favourite is Three Ships. Great tasting, thank you. Lots of love for the Three Ships. Alistair, I'd be happy if given first, third or fifth, but Loch, Lomond and Basil only 50 out of 100. Great, I agree with you. So those first three were great. I really liked the Basil Haydens, I have to say, and I know there's a lot of people who might disagree with me, but I thought it was a wonderful dram, but really respect your opinion. Japanese whiskey lover. I had the Kavalan Soloist Taiwanese whiskey for a sample dram from you guys, actually, and it was sublime. You are welcome, Japanese whiskey lover. I love Kavalan and Taiwanese whiskey. Got to big it up. Claire Hansen, really glad we have signed up for the subscription. Can't wait to do this again. Thanks and Happy New Year. Claire, we'll see you in January. We've got some awesome drams for the January box, so do sign up. There's still time to get in for that January box, and I'll see you then, because we've got one of my favourites, actually. I was mentioning it before, I don't want to give it too much away. Lord Crispy. I'll say this though, go back to the Loch Lomond now. It's great. Lord Crispy, before we go, I'm going to take your recommendation, because that is very true that drams do need to sit sometimes for quite a bit of time before you can really truly make a judge on them. And it's still really interesting and still quite cheesy. So I'm really interested to try what this is going to try like, having let it sit. Fiona Ken, hubby liked the Daluaine, but also liked the last one because the way it lingered on the tongue. I agree with you. It's actually still lingering on my tongue. The finish on the 21-year-old Perspective series was the longest out of all 5. And it's really interesting because the 21-year-old gives it that kind of longer finish, the longer time spent in the cask. So that's really interesting. Glenn Cross, Loch Lomond was my top. Glenn, you're the first person to say that, and I'm pleased you have, because it was an awesome dram. And yeah, it's interesting how all our tastes and palates are so different, and we all enjoy different things. That is the great thing about whiskey, and the great thing about the subscription box is you're going to try so many different types of whiskey. Who would have thought Loch Lomond with South African whiskey? They don't go, but that's the great thing about this, is it's exploring our palates. And I'm enjoying this with you. My palate is really enjoying trying South African whiskey, Loch Lomond, back to back. Gemma Woodhead, definitely the Three Ships, followed by Daluaine. It's a great shout. Lord Crispy, thank you and Happy New Year. Joe DM, Blend and Ride, both really good, but favourite of the lot was Three Ships. I think the Three Ships may have been winning here so far. Park Guy, hope to see you again soon. Tejvin, hello. Japanese whiskey lover. It's my first time trying Thai whiskey, but it was sublime. Glenn Cross going to open an Auchentoshan now for Hogmanay. Happy New Year. Happy New Year, Glenn Cross. Great shout for a dram. James W, Three Ships. Second was Daluaine. Guys, thank you so much. That was so many to get through, and thank you so much for watching. I'm now going to give you the big reveal of which one. Wickley, Edgewood is my favourite. Wickley, you've just guessed my whiskey of the year. It's you've just guessed my whiskey of the year. Right at the end there, the Edgewood natural cask strength 12-year-old. is my whiskey of the year, and you'll see that on Instagram soon. But it is just one of the best whiskies out there. I really have to say, it's just one of my favourites. But what has my favourite been tonight? I'd say I think it's the Daluaine 16. I think it's a wonderful sherried whiskey. It really suits my palate. And out of all of them tonight, it's possibly the one that I remember the most. But I love them all. So it's really hard to say. It's such a hard question. I'm so sorry. I loved the Loch Lomond. I loved the Three Ships. Maybe it's because we tried it first that I'd forgotten about the Three Ships. But that was such an interesting whiskey from South Africa. Glen Whiskey, Happy New Year. Katie Joseph, this has been a fab tasting. Thanks so much. Guys, unless anyone else has anything else to say, please state your claim now. But this has been so enjoyable for me to end 2020, what has been a very strange year for all of us, on such a high note, trying such amazing whiskey with great people. I really hope that 2021 is better for all of us. And I can't wait to share more drams with you. Please subscribe to Pour and Sip if you haven't already. Just last comments here. Sorry, before my last gambit goes on too long. Adrenaline Alco, love that name. Happy New Year from Russia. Happy New Year to Unstoppable Force of Will. Thank you. You are welcome. Kartik Gadad, which is your all-time favourite? That's such a hard question. But I often say it's the Lefroy 10 cask strength. But my favourite of the year this year, the Edredour 12. Check my Instagram. Park Guy, love from India. I recently went to Mumbai, possibly one of the most amazing places I've ever been to. Thank you so much. It's an incredible country, and I tried some amazing Paul John whiskey over there. Wickley, isn't it? It's divine. Totally. I have to say it has been the biggest surprise for me, and it will be more well known. I will force Pour and Sip, hopefully, to feature the Edredour 12 in the next box. I promise you, if you subscribe. Unstoppable Force of Will. Haha. Katie Joseph, Happy New Year. Japanese whiskey lover, cheers for sharing. I'll have to look it up for sure. Thank you. Wickley, I sent the unstoppable force of a bottle of Edredour. He's now a whiskey addict. Good. That's a great recommendation. I'm pleased you listened. Alistair, Happy New Year. See you soon. January the 7th. Sorry, January the 7th. Thank you for reminding me, Alistair. Is our next live tasting. So if you do get a box, get in time, because January the 7th, we've got our first live tasting. It'll be with me and my good friend Christy, and we'll see you then. Copite, I hope that's not a Liverpool comment. I'm a big Arsenal fan. But I do want you guys to win the league this year. Will you do this again? Absolutely. Please stay tuned and subscribe to Pour and Sip. We will absolutely do this again. Spiritissime. I'm expecting Italian. I can actually speak Italian, just for everyone in there. French whiskey for us tonight. I actually have a French whiskey here that got sent to me recently. Really interesting stuff, but enjoy. Gousewak, we'll try Lefroy 16 someday, or a very kind of mild Lefroy, I have to say, but it's a wonderful, wonderful dram. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope 2021 is better for all of us. Thank you so much. Please subscribe to Pour and Sip if you haven't. This happens all the time on Pour and Sip. We are having an absolute party. Copite, you are sorry, but this year I have to say I want you guys to win the league if it stops Man United or Spurs winning the league. So I am kind of a Liverpool fan for now. So yeah, but it's so bad for Arsenal at the moment that I don't really care. Kartik Gadad, have you tried the Desi Indian whiskey? No, I haven't, but thank you for the recommendation. Wickley, yes, please. Katie Joseph, I'm now following you on Instagram, London Whiskey Guy. Adrenaline Alco, what are you drinking tonight? I'm going to go for this gold thing behind me, the Springbank 21, which I'm really excited to try. Thank you all for tuning in. I hope to see you soon. Please subscribe to Pour and Sip. We have an awesome live tasting on the 7th. It's still time to get your box. And I will see you all soon. Happy New Year to you all. And cheers. I hope to see you all soon in the new year. Maybe one more question, Copite. Brilliant. Cheers, mate. You'll never walk alone. I'll leave on that. Cheers.